The mind is endless. You put me in a dark, solitary cell, and to you, that's the end. To me, it's the beginning. It's a universe in there. There's a world in there. I'm free.
IVOR Davis, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Today's topic of conversation will be Manson Exposed, a reporter's 50-year journey into madness and murder. 50 years. There's enough meat on that bone, Ivor?
I think there's leftovers, believe me. Plenty. It's a long-running, horrendous saga. It would have ended in 1970 when Manson and his girls, who were convicted of the murder of 7 innocent people, were sent to the San Quentin death chamber, the gas chamber, to die. And to be honest with you, my opinion is that, well, what happened was in 1971, California abolished the death penalty. So they got a get out of jail free card, not really, but death was banned. And if Manson and his gang had been executed in San Quentin, as many people were, you and I'm sure, would not be having this conversation. It didn't happen, and Manson then went on to become a superstar on television. I mean, he knew how to use the media. And I think he's probably better known, particularly in North America, than Jack the Ripper. If you were to poll your listeners, they would say, yeah, Jack the Ripper, vaguely remember him, but Charlie Manson, wow, we remember him.
But he never actually killed anyone.
Strictly speaking, he never actually killed any of the people he was convicted of killing. He was not convicted of killing. He didn't actually kill Sharon Tate and the friends in our house. He didn't kill Lino and Rosemary LaBianca on August the 10th, 1969. But, and this is a big but, it's proven that he sent his minions out to kill the people in Cielo Drive, Beverly Hills, August the 9th, 1969. He sent them out to kill, and he took his young killers out to the home in Los Angeles of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. He went into the house. He tied the terrified couple up. He left, and he told his minions to go back into the house and finish them off. So technically speaking, he didn't do it. But in California, if you can prove a conspiracy to commit murder, you get your head chopped off, you will be convicted, and that's what happened. And basically, I'll tell you this, based on my information and my research and my reporting, Manson was definitely guilty of organizing these 2 killings on 2 consecutive nights in August of 1969.
Before we focus on your theories, explain to the audience what exactly your involvement with the case was.
I was a reporter in 1969 for the London Daily Express, a big 4 million readers a day newspaper. And that was within the days, some of your listeners may remember, when people actually read newspapers. And so my office was on the West Coast. I happened to be at the right place at the right time. My office said there's been a report of a mass murder in Beverly Hills. Go there and find out what's going on. That was August the 9th, 1969. I went there, and then over a period of the next 5 months, this horrible story unfolded, and I covered it day to day. And then when they arrested Charles Manson and his girls and his acolytes for the murder, I covered the trial, which lasted a year. And since then, I've written the book about it, and I've interviewed most of the key players in this long-running saga. So that's what happened. I was a reporter, right place at the right time.
Well, much of what we know comes from the book Helter Skelter, written by Vincent Bugliosi. The book came out in 1974. You know, a lot of people are skeptical about the book itself and the theory. What are your thoughts on Helter Skelter?
Vincent Bugliosi was a dedicated district attorney with a gigantic ego. And you put those together, and if you read the book, it kind of shows that Vincent, who wrote the book with a guy called Kurt Gentry, actually solved the case single-handedly. Well, to be honest with you, he didn't. But the book was a bestseller. Vincent became a star. in a nutshell, if I may, Vincent Bugliosi decided that the motive for the murders and the way to implicate Manson in it, even though he didn't kill any of the 6 victims, was to prove that Manson was the mastermind behind these murders. So he came up with a theory, which even today, when I tell it to you, seems absolutely woo-woo land. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And here's what he said. He told the jury that Manson brainwashed his acolytes who lived with him at the Spahn movie ranch on the edge of Hollywood. He said to them, listen to the White Album lyrics from songs like the Beatles songs like Helter Skelter and Revolution. And you will see that the Beatles are sending me, Charles Manson, secret messages that America is about to be involved in a savage race war where the blacks and the whites will kill each other. There'll be rivers of blood, and the only people to survive will be Charlie Manson and his gang, because we have a underground city where we can escape to. Russell, just pointing that out is outrageous, ridiculous. Listen to the Helter Skelter lyrics. Paul McCartney sings it. Paul McCartney wrote it. It's got nothing to do with a white revolution, a black revolution, a race war. And neither do the other songs. Piggies, well, Charlie Manson said Piggies was the cops. So here you have a situation that he actually cut his own throat. He showed the jury that whenever he told the girls to do something, no matter how outrageous, like cutting swastikas into their foreheads and singing and being outrageously ridiculous during the trial, when he said do it, the girls did it, and the jury thought, wow, you know, if he tells them to do these ridiculous things in front of a jury, surely he told them to go out and kill. And so Manson is as culpable of these murders as the rest of them.
So you're in the audience, you're in the courtrooms, you can see Manson, you spoke with Manson?
Yes, so, well, you know, you actually say, hi, Charlie. I mean, it was ridiculous. Charlie was not Manson. It was, I mean, and the way he was dressed, you know, he was dressed not in a business suit. He was dressed in buckskin. He was dressed, the girls looked as though they were going to a country dance in their flowing outfits. And I could see that Manson liked when somebody came in, if there was a pretty young woman that happened to get into the courtroom, I could see Manson trying to give her the evil eyes, outstaring members of the audience, members of the in the courtroom. And you could see Manson was having games, playing games. Manson never said a word in his own defense, would you believe, during the whole year-long trial. So it was a circus act. Not only was it a circus act, they had they had some competent lawyers, but they had a lot of incompetent lawyers representing the Manson girls who also never testified in their own defense. So you had a crazy trial. Manson was running the show. Manson was firing lawyers for his fellow co-defendants. And it was just as I say, a circus.
Well, Manson saw himself as an aspiring musician. He wrote music, of course, played guitar well. He had some interaction with Dennis Wilson from the Beach Boys. This was his moment. This was his 15 minutes.
This was his 15 minutes. And to be honest with you, not only did he milk it for all it was worth, I mean, he never became a rock star, which is, as you said, he wanted to do. And that's why he hooked up with Dennis Wilson, the drummer of the Beach Boys, to get Dennis to use his influence to get Charlie a recording contract. It never happened. But Charlie then became, because he wasn't put to death, he became a star. He became a media star. I mean, look at, over a period of 10 to 15 years, look at all the interviews he did with Diane Sawyer, with Tom Snyder. And if you watch those shows, and if anybody watches those shows, it's a great piece of entertainment. Charlie Manson comes across as the monster, as the bogeyman, and you can watch him in the safety of your living room. So he's not going to come and knock at your door, but you can see him entertain. Each performance is brilliant. I must tell you, I've watched those interviews on television on prime time in America, in North America, and he is quite terrific. I mean, he's gibberish, he's entertaining, he's everything you want to be a sort of caged monster to be like. You get your money's worth when you see him.
Is that a different persona that you saw on the Diane Sawyer interviews and that you saw in the courtroom?
Yes, yeah, it was a different persona, and yet there were flashes of what he did in the courtroom, he did in the interviews, with the Sawyer interviews, with the Snyder interviews, with the Ron Reagan interviews. One minute he was humble, next minute he was bragging, the next minute he was yammering on, not making one iota of sense. So he really mixed it up. And those shows are entertaining even today. And as a result, a lot of people said he didn't kill anybody. A lot of people thought he was purely for the environment. Who isn't for the environment? We all want good, clean air. Yet he was a rather monstrous individual who did trigger these awful killings.
What did you make of Charles Manson? What was your feeling? Did he come off as a charlatan? Was he charismatic, a genius? Was he all those things, an actor?
First of all, if he'd gone to get a job as an actor in Hollywood, he would have been good, because he really acts on all those television interviews. He's a terrific actor. I mean, and he knew, as you said a moment ago, Russell, he had his moment or moments or hours in the sun in court. And he knew that everybody was focused on him. And as a young man, he survived jails and reform schools and terrible treatment behind bars. And he knew that this was his time. This was his. So many people wanted to interview him because he was full value. As an individual, I could always see him performing. I could see him even from the very first moment I saw him when he was arraigned on a car theft charge in Inyo County, California, about 200 miles from LA. Manson knew he had an audience and he loved to play to it. If he'd had a guitar and they'd given him a guitar, he would have sung. I'm serious. He would have said, I can't testify in person, but give me a guitar and I'm going to sing you my defense. It's ridiculous, but that could have happened.
Have you read the book or are familiar with the book by Michael Stone, Anatomy of Evil?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
He talks about all serial killers and murderers. The idea of the book is to attribute each person with a particular number on the scale of 1 to 22, 22 being the most evil. You had John Jones, 12, Ted Bundy, a 17, Jeffrey Dahmer, the worst you could possibly be, the serial torturer murderers, at 22. Manson was a 15.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Can you tell me, I mean, to be honest with you, I've read a lot of books on Manson.
Yep.
There was a great TV series called Mind Hunters, which is quite a good...
I saw that. It's Mind Hunter, yeah. Was that an accurate portrayal of Manson?
I think it was a pretty accurate portrayal, because if you remember, for those who don't know, I mean, it's a wonderful show about these FBI agents who go and see serial killers and talk to them in jail, and they have him going to see Manson. And Manson, if I seem to remember, one of the key things is in the middle of the interview, Manson kind of gets off his chair and sits on the table facing his interrogators. And that's the kind of thing he would do. So I'm jumping back to, I'm going to now, when we finished our conversation, Russell, go out and get that Anatomy of Evil, because I wonder why they gave Charlie only a 15.
Because he never directly killed anyone.
Yes.
You know, I mean, yeah. Ted Bundy, you could say, is a worse guy at a 17, raping and killing women. Jeffrey Dahmer, you know, torturing.
But the interesting thing about Manson, I mean, this is one of the ridiculous idiosyncrasies of Manson. Manson decided not to get personally involved in the killings because here's what his thinking was. And he said this many times. He said, if I get involved in any killings that are attributed to me, they're gonna take my parole back, and I'm gonna have to go to prison. So he was worried about parole being taken away. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it?
But yet, on a lot of these interviews, he seems to embrace prison as though that's his true home.
He does, and many of the interviews that he's done, he says, "Where else would I be? I spent my whole life in prison. Prison is the only place I know." And when he was in prison, and before he died a couple of years ago, he very cleverly manipulated the system of California prisons to go to the jails that he felt most comfortable at. I mean, he loved courtroom because he got isolation. He got to know the wardens, he was always a star wherever he went. And whoever it was, whether it was kids visiting the jail or top California prison authorities, they all wanted to meet Charlie, ridiculous as it may seem. So he was a star behind bars, and he kind of liked that. And as he said, and as you said, he loved to say, well, prison is my home. I'll tell you an interesting story. I always found this was interesting, that I think it was Folsom Prison that Mr. Manson found his next door neighbor in Folsom was a guy called Timothy Leary. And I don't know if you remember, but Timothy Leary was the great provider, the great backer of LSD. And Timothy Leary was no dummy. I mean, he was a brilliant man. But there was Manson and Leary, cell by cell, next door each other at Folsom Prison. Well, here's my theory, which I believed from day one. There was a guy called Robert Beausoleil, who was a musician. He was an acolyte of Charlie Manson. And Bobby Beausoleil killed Gary Hinman. Now, Gary Hinman was murdered in July 1969, 2 weeks before the Sharon Tate murders. And Beausoleil was an acolyte of Manson who'd gone to the Gary Hinman house in Topanga Canyon. Gary Hinman was a musician, a sweet, gentle guy, a Buddhist, would you believe? When he didn't have any clients to teach music to, he cooked up a bit of mescaline and sold it to whoever wanted it. So Charlie Manson sent Bobby Beausoleil to his house in Topanga Canyon in late July 69 and said, get all his money. Mr. Hinman said he didn't have any money. Charlie came over, cut his ear off. One of the girls sewed Hinman's ear back on again. Charlie left and told Beausoleil, you know what to do. And Beausoleil killed him. Beausoleil then took the murder victim's car, stupidly was arrested by the highway patrol and was in jail facing the death penalty. Charlie felt, believe it or not, some loyalty to Bobby Beausoleil because Beausoleil never implicated Charlie Manson in the Gary Hinman murder. So Charlie, in his cooked up brain, said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to set up some look-alike murders so that when the cops see the murders, they're going to say, hey, Bobby Beausoleil couldn't have done these murders because they're copycat killings to the Hinman murder. So Bobby Beausoleil must be innocent. We're going to set him free. I mean, that sounds like bizarre reasoning, but I believe that Manson sent them to the Sharon Tate house, to the La Bianca house, to cover up for Bobby Beausoleil. Of course, it didn't work. But can you imagine just setting up mass murder to cover for a friend? But I believe he did it.
Manson ordered them to leave the wallet at the crime scene. Manson was capable of wanting to mislead authorities.
Yes, because you see, here's what happened. They took Rosemary LaBianca's wallet, second night of murders, and he's told Linda Kasabian, who was one of the young followers of Charlie, he said, we're going to drive to a black neighborhood and you're going to dump the wallet in a restroom in a gas station in a black neighborhood. And she did it. She put it in a restroom in Sylmar, except Charlie made a big mistake. Sylmar was not a black neighborhood. So that was a blunder. So Charlie wanted to give the impression with all the signs in blood that the killers at the Sharon Tate house and the La Bianca house had painted Helter Skelter, piggies, on the wall in the blood of the victim. Charlie thought the cops would come in and they would say, this is a race-driven murder. And somehow he thought this would trigger a race war and he would blame the Black Panthers for those murders. Of course, they didn't blame the Black Panthers. It was a clumsy way to try and put the cops off the scent of Manson. Anyway, and the other interesting thing was that at the same time period, Charlie Manson shot Bernard Lotzapopper Crow, who was a drug dealer, over a bad drug deal. He killed him. He thought he killed him, but Crow survived.
Well, Crow had threatened to kill everyone at the ranch.
Yeah, because Crow, here's what happened. You're absolutely right. Crow was stung in a drug deal that Charles Tex Watson, who was the leader of the gang that went to the Sharon Tate house and went to the La Bianca house, he ripped him off And lots of Papa Crow called up the ranch, Spahn Ranch, and said, if you don't give me my money back, I'm going to come over and kill you lot. Well, Charlie killed him, shot him in the stomach, but he didn't kill him. He thought he killed him. And Charlie then panicked. Charlie thought Crow was a member of the Black Panther militant group. He wasn't. And as soon as the shooting took place, Charlie panicked, set up the 2 cover murders, and told everybody he'd killed this Black Panther, and then decided to get away from the Spahn movie ranch and flee. And he did. Charlie's deranged murder plan didn't work. And yet in his own mind, he thought he was a genius setting these front killings up to cover for Bobby Beausoleil. I mean, it sounds a bit complex, but I hope that in a way you and I have sort of clarified the order of the events. And if I may say, July 27th, Gary Hinman is murdered. And August the 1st, Charlie Manson thinks he kills a Black Panther named Bernard Lotzapapa Crow. August the 9th, 8 days later, he sends them out to kill at the Sharon Tate house. A day later, he goes out with them to kill the LaBiancas. And then, fearing that the cops would come, he then manages to get into the desert, where he is arrested 3 months later.
You said from day one, this was your initial thought.
Yeah, from day one. And the reason I thought it was that I spoke to a guy called Aaron Stovitz. And Aaron Stovitz was the chief trial lawyer, and Vincent Bugliosi was his second in command. And I was friendly with Aaron Stovitz, and Stovitz gave me that theory. He believed it. But then what happened was that Aaron Stovitz spoke to the Rolling Stone magazine and was warned before the trial, Aaron, you do not speak to the media. And then during the trial, and Aaron Stovitz was chief of the trial prosecution team, Aaron Stovitz said to the press, and I was there when he said it, Susan Atkins, one of the leaders, or one of the young women that went out to kill Sharon Tate, Susan Atkins was one of the key killers. So I was saying that Charlie Manson just set the whole thing up to try and cover for Bobby Beausoleil, really is what the nitty gritty of this is. And I believe it.
But let me ask you this, and I think it's an important question. Were you looking to prove your own conclusion, or did you arrive at them?
Because my first book, Five to Die, came out before the trial began, and it listed all the things that I've told you, all the theories that I told you, which was basically that he was covering for Bobby Beausoleil, and that he brainwashed his people to believe that the Beatles were giving him secret messages. Now, Aaron Stovitz, and I'm sorry, I'm picking up a moment ago, Aaron Stovitz was running the trial when Susan Atkins said she was sick one day. Aaron Stovitz said the woman is acting. She's not sick. She's a better actress than Sarah Bernhardt. Well, when he said that, all the press ran with that line. It made the headlines in the LA newspapers. The #1 district attorney called Aaron Stovitz in and said, Aaron, I told you to keep your mouth shut. Off the case. So Aaron was booted off the case. And then who took over? Mr. Bugliosi. And that's how Bugliosi became the star. So what I'm saying is that the theory or the thesis that Charlie set up the murders to cover for Bobby Beausoleil was told to me 47, 48 years ago, 49 years ago.
It predates the Helter Skelter theory.
And I'll tell you one other thing. And what I'm about to say sounds as though I'm blowing my own trumpet. But years after the murder trial, I ran into Aaron Stovitz, who was working as a district attorney, temporary district attorney in Ventura County, California. We had lunch, and he said, Ivor, he said, your book, the first book ever written on the Manson murders, Five to Die, was the blueprint that we used in the prosecution. Now, as I say, it sounds like I'm blowing my own trumpet, But he did say that. He did say that Vince picked up the book. He picked up the book. It had all the Beatles Helter Skelter baloney in it, because this is what I was told. Reading Brad Pitt, wanting to do all sorts of things for Brad, the Brad Pitt character. It was, and it was good. The only thing I say is, I mean, I think everybody knows the film. Everybody now has seen it, but it is a fairy tale, isn't it? Because of how it ends up. So that's Quentin Tarantino, and that's the way he does it. But I kind of like the film, and I know people who've seen it 5 or 6 times. They love it. Did you love it?
I thought it was good. I'm not certain. I think it's brilliant. It's a good movie. Yeah, 3 out of 4.
Yeah, 3 out of 4. That's not bad. So I mean, Tarantino stretches the truth. I mean, what was it? Inglourious Bastards. You saw that film?
Yes, where he kills Hitler.
He kills Hitler, yeah. And we all know. I don't think he did kill Hitler. I mean, Quentin Tarantino did, but Hitler didn't die that way.
No, I don't believe so.
No.
Not with a flamethrower?
No.
Is that how?
Yes, exactly. There you go.
Yeah, well, people say, Charles Manson never actually killed anybody, but neither did Hitler.
Well, that's right, but there it is. And I think from what I learned from the people at the Spahn Ranch in 1969 was that he admired Hitler. He liked Hitler. And, I think Charlie Manson was a racist. He was a racist. And the reason that he ordered the murder and participated in the murder of Donald Shorty Shea, who was a stuntman, was that Shorty Shea, number one, got the cops out to raid the Spahn Ranch and arrest Manson, and then he let him go because they didn't know he was guilty of murder. They just thought he was guilty of stealing cars. And the other thing that Charlie Manson hated about Shorty Shea was that he married a black woman. And Charlie was a racist, there's no doubt. And of course, Charlie had to survive in Folsom, had to survive in San Quentin, had to survive in all the jails with a very strong black brethren, or whatever they call them in jail. So Manson knew how to survive.
When you first met Charlie, did he have the swastika carved into his head, or was it a cross only at that time, or did that happen at some point during the trial? And what did you make of that? That must have been unbelievable.
It was. I mean, here's the course of affairs. I first met Charlie in December of 1969 when he was arraigned for car theft in Inyo County, California, which was in the town of Independence, and he was up there for car theft. And I went up there to see what he was like. He loved the spotlight, and he had a full audience. And he never said anything except they pled not guilty to car theft. And then 24 hours later, he was taken by LAPD homicide cops to LA to face the music in Los Angeles. So he was, as I say, a performer from the moment I saw him. And as I said to you earlier, he was a performer at every one of his hearings. And so on the first day of the trial, Charlie Manson shows up with a cross on his forehead. And the girls who are free, sitting on the sidewalk outside the courtroom in July 1970, when the trial began, have also put crosses on their forehead. And how they were able to do that in prison, I don't know. And then during the course of the trial, the cross became a swastika. And I honestly believe that Charlie Manson used to replenish the cross and the swastika for his television interviews, because even though you carve something, and I don't know, I've never carved anything on my forehead, I would imagine that the healing process means that after 6 months, whatever you carve on your forehead kind of heals naturally, unless you reinvent it. And Charlie reinvented it for his television appearances 10 years later. So Charlie decided it was his message. How the heck you get enough equipment or a branding iron to do that, I don't know, but somehow he was able to do it. And that was the history of the cross, which became the swastika, which became a sort of calling card for Manson.
Do you think Manson was even interested in being acquitted, or just there for the spectacle of it all?
I think he was there for the spectacle.
I mean, if you're carving a swastika into your head, what sane judge is going to acquit you? It doesn't look good.
It doesn't look. Yes, it doesn't look good. but yeah, I mean, a trial that lasts nearly a year, and you claim that you're innocent, and you do not decide to testify in your own defense. He did not. He told the girls that they were not to testify in their own defense. And I'll tell you this, during the trial, Manson testified for 1 hour, but, and this is the big but when he testified, when he rambled on for 1 hour, the jury were excused, and the judge listened to him for an hour when he rambled on about himself, his background, the unfairness of the trial, of judicial system in America, the Vietnam War. And then the judge said, okay, Mr. Manson, thank you for that. We'll bring the jury back. Would you like to repeat some of your comments to the jury? And Charlie said, no. He said, not only will I not repeat it to the jury, the girls will not testify. And so, I mean, look at it yourself. You claim that you're innocent. Why don't you get on the stand and testify? Why don't you say how you may have run the operation, but you were never there, you never killed anybody? Manson made a clear decision not to testify to the jury because I think he thought whatever he said, number one, the jury wouldn't believe him. Number two, the prosecution could rip his throat out with questions and really expose him for the fraud or for the character that he was. So he took a calculated gamble by not testifying. And the jury is told, just because a defendant does not wish to testify, you should not take anything into account. Well, come on, if you think you're innocent, you've got to say something, haven't you?
What was your sense of his intelligence?
Well, he was actually brilliant at times. I mean, here is a man that when the jury was excused, we sit there listening to him talk for 1 hour solid without a single note. Now, it's true that what he said was all over the place. As I said, it was about how, he'd grown up in a poverty-stricken world, abandoned by his father. He barely knew his mother. It was a hard luck story about surviving in jail. Jail is my home. It's been my home for most of my life. All that kind of stuff about, you call yourself, you're looking for justice. What about the Vietnam War? Is that so he ran all over the place with a 1 hour unscripted conversation. How many people can get up and talk for an hour non-stop? It's very hard. So I've got to give him that. It was quite brilliant. It was quite crazy. It was insane. It was all over the place. It was gibberish, and yet some of it made sense.
Do you think he was smart enough to know that had he not been thrown in prison, that he very well may have just been murdered on the street? He was, as you said, a racist.
Yeah. Well, I think.
I mean, maybe it was just for the fact of his own protection. Yeah, throw me in jail.
Yeah.
I'll be safer there.
And to be honest with you, he manipulated the jail system to his own, as I mentioned a little earlier with you, talking to you. I mean, he knew which jail to go to. He knew that if he, for example, he would maybe not punch, but he would insult a prison guard, and then he would be put into isolation. But he loved isolation because it meant he didn't have to mingle with the riffraff of the jail. So he knew how to manipulate the system. And every guard that I spoke to and prison warden said, he did it. As I said, he was a star. He knew he was the number one attraction. And there were a lot of people in the jail system who thought, I'm going to off-charge. And I heard that George DiCenzo, the actor, played Vincent Bugliosi. And so I kept in touch with Vincent that way. I interviewed him when the TV series came out. I also interviewed Vincent when he ran for district attorney and lost to John Vanderkamp in Los Angeles. And I wrote a profile of Vincent about, and to be honest with you, it was leaning towards his opponent, John Vanderkamp, and it wasn't a very flattering piece about Vincent. About a year or two later, I met Vincent again at a television critics event where he'd come to talk. And he said to me, "Do you still hate me?" And I said, "Vincent, I don't hate you." What stung him was what stung him was my article in Los Angeles magazine profiling him and John Vanderkam, in which I showed a lot of the negativity of Vincent, and Vincent took it as a personal attack on him. And I said, "Vince, I don't hate you. Honestly," I said, "I just wrote a piece that I felt." But I thought the fact that he would come to me and say, "Hello, Ivor, do you still hate me?" shows, despite his arrogant nature, despite his success as a best-selling author and as a star and as the man who got Manson, there was a huge streak of insecurity in Vincent Bugliosi. But he was a good lawyer, and I must say he did an incredible job and devoted his life. I mean, I think his marriage suffered, but he was the man that got Manson, and he loved that. And as many of your listeners know, he went on to write several other books, including one about Bobby Kennedy might have been murdered by somebody else other than Sirhan. And he became a star in his own right. And Vincent Bugliosi, for those of you who know, died about 5 years ago. So he was a character, and he was a personality. He was a strong guy, and he was a guy during the trial who hated the press because he felt the press were against him. But they weren't really. They just, they were friendly with the defense because the defense spoke to the press. Vincent Bugliosi did not speak to the media unless he had something specific to say.
Bugliosi died in 2015.
Yeah.
Manson died, 2016? When was this book of yours published?
Manson Exposed, a reporter's 50-year journey into madness and murder, came out literally 6 months ago in 2019.
Why did you release this book now?
Because I released this book now because, number one, it'd been simmering in my journalistic system for 50 years. And don't forget, last year was the 50th anniversary of the murders. So when you're an author, you try and coincide books to coincide with anniversaries. I mean, my book, The Beatles and Me on Tour, about my travels with the Beatles, came out on the 50th anniversary of the Beatles' visit to America, the first visit to America, which was in 1964. So as a journalist and a writer of non-fiction books, you try and bring a book out to coincide with an anniversary, which enables you to get publicity because, you can write a book and it can be terrific, it can be terrible, and you have to get out there and tell people about it. And the same with a movie, a play, a book. You have to bang the drum, not softly, loudly. We've covered a lot of ground, and I hope I haven't confused your listeners with too much information, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk because they're both absolutely fascinating cases. I mean, the Manson murders, unbelievable, happened to tie in with my experience with the Beatles, which were first-hand experiences with Manson. And so why is my book different from all other books? Because it has a lot of personal stuff in it.
And the Beatles didn't make them do it. Exactly.
And I must tell you this, finally, when I spoke to John Lennon about it and Paul McCartney, they said they were gobsmacked is the word. And John Lennon said to me, and I knew John, of course, and John said, first of all, he didn't want to talk about it. He swore a few times. He said, people look at our lyrics and they interpret the most insane things about the lyrics. He said, but we didn't write the lyrics of the White Album to ignite a race war. That is absolute. And he used a rather strong Liverpudlian swear word.
Ivor Davis, thank you so much for today's conversation. Brilliant stuff. To the audience, check out his website, ivordavisbooks.com. Ivor, are you on any social media? Can the audience interact with you in any way, ask you questions perhaps directly?
Well, they can. The best way is to go to www.ivordavisbooks.com, and I do reply, and I do get a lot of questions on Ivor Davis author Facebook. So I'd be very happy to answer questions on that, and also on my book website, and always willing to answer questions and try and reveal things that people don't know. So go for it.
Pick up the book, Manson Exposed, a reporter's 50-year journey into madness and murder. I'm sure available where all fine books are sold. Thank you again, Ivor Davis, for your appearance today.
It's been a pleasure, Russell. Thank you for your time.